What's happened to the Star-Spangled Banner? It's gone. Vanished. The gramophone broke. Now, I'm certainly in favor of all mechanical progress, but don't you think it might have been better to have that beautiful anthem played by an old-fashioned brass band with real live musicians than by an overwound, aged gramophone with a weak spring, which has obviously just snapped? In today's circumstances of national unpreparedness, perhaps that's symbolic. Or perhaps not. Maybe it's just got the gout, like me, full of the rheumatism. Old, in other words, and finally acting its age, like me. Well, Bully, I've always said I'd rather wear out than rust out, wouldn't you? Good evening, my dear friends, and thank you all for coming out to hear me give Mr. Wilson an earful, which I certainly intend to do. I like the Star-Spangled Banner a great deal, and unlike Mr. President Woodrow Wilson, I hold that anyone who stands up with a full heart when that tune is played, because of what it means, is entitled to a say in his government. But the sweetest music I know is the bird song in Sagamore Hill, in the quiet of the early morning in Long Island. Or it was quiet before the arrival of the motor car and the aeroplane, which have scared all of the birds off the hills and into the salt marshes, where many of them cannot live. They must stay in the air too long, fly too much, without rest, perfect prey for the red hawks that... Godfrey. It is not so wide as a church door, nor so deep as a well, but 'twill serve, 'twill serve. That's Shakespeare, but then you knew that. I can do this. You still have the big stick. I can do this. There. There. You see, Bully. I know that many of you who read this morning's newspapers are concerned, so I will read you this telegram, which was brought to me yesterday morning by Mr. Phil Thompson, a friend of mine who's a reporter with the New York Sun. He received this from his overseas bureau yesterday. Watch Sagamore Hill for blank. It was censored. Phil came up to the house from town, said, "What's this mean?" Well, many of you know that my son, Quentin, our youngest, was recently commissioned as a first lieutenant in the 95th American Aero Squadron. And 2 weeks ago, he downed his first German plane in an aerial fight, and we got a letter from him. A rare occasion, as those of you with 20-year-olds away from home for the first time will appreciate. Yesterday, at Chambray, France, Quentin was apparently separated from his flight, and he was set upon by 6 or 7 of the planes of the Hun and shot down. But his cousin Eleanor, my brother Elliot's daughter, was in Paris, and she sent word to his mother and me that one of Quentin's airmates thought that he had been able to bring his plane intact to earth and had been captured by the Germans. And neither of these reports could be confirmed immediately. So his mother and I just had to wait. And my sister Corinne telephoned to suggest that under the circumstances I cancel coming here tonight to speak to you. But I said, Corinne, to the contrary, under the circumstances, it is my simple duty. So let me speak, as I've come here to do, on the subject of this war and the conduct of the presidency. The prime purpose of the American people at this time is to win this war, to win it as speedily as possible, and to end it by the peace of overwhelming victory, which shall guarantee to us, to our allies, and to all of the well-behaved nations of the civilized world, lasting relief from the threat and horror of German world domination. Now, of course, my speaking this way will make you think that I'm a truculent and bloodthirsty person who is trying to thwart the able, dignified, and humane Mr. Wilson in his noble plan to bring peace to the planet by sending excellently written letters to persons who care nothing for any letter that is not backed up by force. And how many letters did he send to the Germans after number 11,785, Series B? I fear I lost track. A letter when the Kaiser attacked Belgium. A letter when the Lusitania went down, killing 1,200 souls. Asking merely for an apology and a pledge to be good in future. A letter when Germany told us that we would be allowed to send a single American ship each week to Europe on a specified track, provided it carried only what Germany let it, and if it was painted with red and white stripes. My friends, we're sailing through a thick stripe of yellow at present in our national life. A letter when Germany threatened to sic Mexico on us if we dared to declare war upon them. And after Mr. Wilson's eloquent letter, in elegant English, politely suggested to the Kaiser that if they kept on murdering, America might be forced into armed neutrality. Finally, the terrified Huns responded. How? By submarine torpedoing 3 more of our ships, killing almost everyone in them. Cowardly, unscrupulous, cold-blooded, hypocritical, and that's the president. A president who proclaims that Americans are too proud to fight. Are you too proud to fight? My friends, this is not a rose water parlor pink tea crisis. This president's a cold-hearted fellow without convictions, who has never faced danger, either physically or morally, and who kept us out of war to keep in office when we should have been in it. And now, because of Wilson's criminal, woeful policy of broomstick preparedness, which is nothing short of criminal, murderous unpreparedness, our children are playing catch-up in a very dangerous game, and our country and our civilization is faced with a desperate battle to save civilization itself. And now, if we leave Germany with a stranglehold on Russia, Bulgaria, Austria, Turkey, it will mean that she has won the war. No! No! Belgium must be reinstated and reimbursed. France must have back Alsace and Lorraine. Armenia must be freed and the genocide stopped. Syrian Christians must be protected, and the Jews must be given Palestine. Beg your pardon. Difficult to breathe. Moreover, we must raise against Germany the sleeping sword of the Slavs, the Poles, the Czechs, the Yugoslavs. We must save all of these submerged peoples. Unless we do this, we shall have failed. And our announcement about making the world safe for democracy will be but an empty boast. Lord, it is bitter not to be with my sons who are fighting at the front now. The 19th of November. That is Quentin's 21st birthday. 21st birthday. By Jove, what a celebration we have planned. My friends, I'm an asthmatic. I have asthma. From the age of 4, I've had to fight to live. My father taught me how. When I was little, he would hold me and walk with me, rocking me, talking to me, telling me stories, as long as it took to put breath back into me. My father never panicked. Later, he would throw me in the carriage he kept ready for the purpose and drive with me through the city to the river very, very fast. He was a great whip and a great driver. And he had the best and the fastest team of horses in the city. And the change of air or the speed of the buggy as I held on for dear life would sometimes stop an attack. Later, when I was 11, we went to Europe, and one day, hiking in the Alps, I tried very hard to keep up with my father. And after a great struggle, I did, and I found that I could breathe. My father knelt before me. He gripped my shoulders with his great hands. Theodore, you have the mind, but not the body. The mind, without the help of the body, cannot go as far as it should. You must make your body. It's a hard struggle, but now I know that you can do it. I said, I can. I will. And I did. I did, by Godfrey. From that day I did it. And I did it for my father. For my father. When my father came home, all of us children would jump up and down. Hello, what are you doing here? Huh? Someone must have told you that I was coming here today, didn't they? Oh, yes, someone did. Yes, well, it's nice to see you too. Yes. When my father came home, all of us children would jump up and down on the stairs and yell, I call cubbyhole! Because I was the frailest, but also the loudest. Very often I got cubbyhole first, which meant that I got to sit next to father, wedged between him and the arm of the great sofa, while my brother and my sisters all had to sit on the outside of him in a row. I was cordially hated by my siblings for that. You know, a fella in Brooklyn made these after it was printed in the press that I had refused to kill a bear cub on a hunt in Mississippi, and he called them teddy bears. Yeah. When I spoke at Cambridge University in England, this fella here was lowered on a pulley in front of my face with a sign saying, not to be shot, whenever they wanted to rag me. Delightful. They told me that when Charles Darwin spoke there, they hurled a live monkey down from the ceiling upon him. Well, it serves him right. Delightful. Like Harvard, yes? Because of my asthma, I had to fight to get into Harvard and fight to stay in. But I fought for a place to make my father proud of me. I boxed, I wrestled, I lifted weights, rode, sculled, skated, rode horses, and all fairly badly. I studied hard. I asked questions in class to good effect. Mr. Roosevelt, do you mind? I'm running this class, not you. I taught Sunday school in the wrong church, but never mind, it was bully. I didn't smoke or drink, and I stayed pure for my father. And for my future wife, of course, whoever she might be. I had no idea. And I wrote a letter home every night. Sometimes I wrote to Edith Caro at home, a friend of my sister Corinne's. She was much the smartest girl I knew and the most well-read. You see, I'd fallen in love with writing. Every day I wrote in my personal journal, and then I wrote and drew in my zoological journal, and then every night I wrote a letter home, and I was happy. And then overnight, suddenly, before I could even get home, my father died. It was cancer of the stomach. He was 46. I adored my father. He was the best man I ever knew. Only man I was ever afraid of, because I wanted his good opinion so much. long after he died, too late, I understood him. I understood why he had not gone to fight as a soldier in the Civil War, which had disappointed me in him so severely when I was a boy, which I think he knew. Instead, he'd hired a replacement, as many another man had done at that time, but he was bitterly ashamed of it. He hated it, but he knew it would have irrevocably split our family. You see, my mother was a Southerner. She was born in Georgia, raised on a plantation with slaves. How could my father make war on my mother's own people, her own brothers? But he was a great-hearted fighter who fought for his family first. I can only hope to be a tiny part of such a father to my own children as he was to us. Will I ever be worthy? I wonder. Do any of you feel so, gentlemen, ladies? My father, he got me breath. He got me lungs, strength, life. Well, after he died, I could hardly wait to get out of Harvard and get into life. But doing what? I had no idea. I'd always imagined myself to be a naturalist, an outdoorsman, because all my life I had collected and classified hundreds and hundreds of specimens, ranging from birds to snakes to seals. My rooms were a forest of dead skins and embalmed critters and jars and boxes full of bits and pieces of them. My pockets were often full of, you see. I picked this up this morning on the lawn at Sagamore Hill. That's a fox sparrow. It's a fledgling, probably killed by a hawk. Well, I couldn't afford to be a dilettante. My father had taught me that I had to work for my bread and work hard. He also taught me that I had to finish everything I started. So but I was thinking of other things. I had also learned at home that the highest duty, the greatest privilege a man could have, was a happy marriage. But of course I had conceived no idea at all of what sort of a woman I wanted to have as a wife. And then I did. Oh yes, my name is Theodore Roosevelt. How did you? No, I'm third year at Harvard. I'm almost out. Yes, some of my friends call me TD, but I hate that name. I know your name. Your name is Alice Lee, and you're just 17, and you're very tall, rare, radiant, enchanting, sunshine. You wore white like my mother. You were good at games like my mother. Everybody loved you like my mother. But you could keep up with me, not like my mother. I loved you from the very first moment I saw you. You were the first. I wooed you. I won you. I couldn't believe my luck. Why me? It seems a profanation of her memory to have spoken of her this much, or this little. And now I have something else, something more. Bully. Without knowing it at the time, I'd taken something more from my father. He was a reformer who always spoke of politics as a dirty business, both dirty and a business. But he had made himself a part of it simply to fulfill his driving dream, that of helping the poorest of New York, the most helpless. I now conceive the idea of doing something to make government in New York better for everyone. I would become a lawyer. Before you all die laughing, let me just tell you, I didn't finish law school. I dropped out of Columbia after the first year because I got elected to the New York State Legislature. I entered the legislature as the only thing that a young man of my upbringing and background could be, a Lincoln Republican, the party that my father had died for, the party that had saved the Union. I was the dude from New York City's Silk Stocking District! And I was immediately put on the powerful Cities Committee, perhaps because all concerned believed I would instinctively vote with the inner ring. But still, I was not popular. Not with the Democrats, who were mainly stupid, vicious, brutal creatures with no redeeming traits. And that's without mentioning their politics. But also with the Republicans, who were almost as bad. The Speaker of the Assembly, who had been Speaker when I was born, cordially despised me. There were with me 61 Republicans in the Assembly. He continually referred to the number as 60 1/2, meaning yours truly. I'd been told at the outset that men in politics were low, that political clubs are all run by horse car conductors and saloon keepers, rough and brutal men, unpleasant to deal with, and not at all the sort of fellows that you're accustomed to associating yourself with. But I said, if these men are the ones who run everything, then I and the people I know are not members of the governing class. And I intend to be one of the governing class. If I am not too weak to hold my own in the rough and tumble, Mr. Speaker, 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 Mr. Speaker. I was prepared to go on all day. It took me 40 minutes to get recognized. A record. My first as a politician, not my last. Mr. Speaker, I rise in support of the Manhattan Elevated Railways Bill. It's a good bill designed to create an absolutely necessary new rail terminal in New York City. But now, through the machinations of financier Jay Gould, who is a shark and a swindler. What's that? Yes, a shark and a swindler, and who is said to have more power than anyone in the United States due to his ownership of railroads, the telegraph, and the newspapers. This bill has now been compromised by a secret majority of the members of my own committee on a crooked basis. That got their attention. And I regard men like Jay Gould and his associates as members of the most dangerous of all dangerous classes, the wealthy criminal class. And I demand an investigation of this matter, and I so move for a favorable vote on this resolution. It was voted down by the combine, including all of the members of my own committee. Then I asked for an unfavorable vote on this resolution, and they voted that down too. Well, I had taken the precaution of pulling a loose leg off one of the old broken chairs in the lobby, and I now put it where I could get at it. Then I will report this bill anyway for the record, and I will give written reasons why the men here voting to hold this bill up are doing so for graft, corruption, and blackmail. Thank you for your kind attention, gentlemen. They were out of their seats in an instant, a precipitate riot on its way toward me, yelling, cursing, shaking their fists. No, don't try it. Don't try anything. No, if you try, I'll kick you. I'll bite you. I'll hit you in the blank. Gentlemen, there are ladies present. My father always taught me that what's wrong for a woman to hear is equally wrong for a man. No, please don't try anything. No, isn't politics just bully? Tremendous fun. The chair leg, I think, had a sedative effect. And I won the battle. But I lost the war. The bill was taken away from me, handed over to a veteran legislator, and the Black Horse Cavalry won. And the payoff game began. And the blame, my dear friends, is here with you and I, and with any member of the community who will allow that supine indifference to legislative wrongdoing is fine, as long as it's only the corporations who are playing and paying the blackmail. Mr. Speaker, I was up and down out of my seat the entire term like a rocket. They called me Jack in the Box. Silly little man. When they weren't calling me something worse, I didn't mind. Mr. Speaker! The only thing I minded was making a prepared speech. I would get so tongue-tied, out of breath with my teeth in the way. I would bite down on my handkerchief, which my wife told me to please stop doing, as we couldn't afford it. Alice came often to Albany to be with me. And I went home every weekend that I could on a very slow train to New York City to be with her. Finally, she was with child. It was February, comfortless, unhappy, fog-shrouded February. And that day, on the floor of the assembly, I received 2 telegrams. The first one told me that I was the father of a new baby girl. The second was from my brother Elliot in New York City. I had to go home. It seems as if the train journey was infernally slow this night. I finally got home. It was after midnight. In the thick, damp fog, I could see a light still burning in our 3rd-floor bedroom window. I started up the steps, and the front door opened, and my brother, Elliot, came out. He was very distraught. "T.D., there's a curse on this house. Mother is dying, and Alice too." My mother died at 3 a.m., typhoid fever. She was 48. She died the same afternoon. Renal failure following childbirth. It was St. Valentine's Day. She was 22. We had a double funeral at the 5th Avenue Presbyterian Church. Afterwards, I got to christen my new baby daughter. I called her Baby Lee. Her given name was Alice. 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 I sold that cursed house. I gave up politics. I went west to the Dakota Badlands. I left my little daughter in the care of my older sister, Bammy. It was better so. I was determined to shake the cold fog of the East from my soul, determined to make a new life in the Western country, as many another man had done before me. I went as fast as I could, but I was never a great driver like my father. I was never a great whip like him, never. But I rode pretty well, and black care rarely sits behind a rider whose pace is fast enough. I ran 4,500 head of cattle on land the soldiers still fighting the Sioux called hell with the fires out. General Custer had called it that worthless country, but his opinions were often wrong, as it turned out. My ranch was called the Maltese Cross. It was a wild solitude filled with the sound of mourning doves, which suited me just at first. I was afraid of many things, of grizzly bears, mean bucking horses, gunfighters. But by acting as if I was not afraid, gradually, I ceased to be afraid. My goal was to become a cowboy, a good one. And of course I never did. But I never quit trying either. They couldn't stand anyone who quit, or who couldn't or wouldn't do the work. I took them seriously as men and as philosophers. I admired their code. Ride a half-broken horse over any country, day or night, for any length of time required to do the work. Do not tolerate meanness or cowardice or dishonesty. Tell the truth. Keep your word. Hold the hypocrite in contempt. Be self-reliant. Be self-confident. Don't talk unless you've got something to say. And then speak your piece and shut up. And deal with death as a part of life 14 ways every day. You know, if I had never gone west, I would never have become president. But I failed as a rancher. A dry summer killed the grass. An icy, stormy winter killed the cattle, and I lost 75% of my herd. And by now my investment was $82,000, which was 20% of my entire resources, and I lost that too. And I had to go home. But I love the West, and I owe more to it than I can ever accept. I never met anyone there who was unwilling to work, or unwilling to help others, or willing to accept any favors for himself. I'm so proud that I was accepted by the people of the West. And before I left, on the 4th of July at Dickinson, I got to tell them this in a public way. The Declaration of Independence derives its peculiar importance not from what America was, but from what she would become. She shares with other nations the present. She yields to them the past. But in return, to her belongs the future. We here are the pioneers. And because we shape the course of the stream so near its head, our efforts will have infinitely more effect in bending it in any given direction. So it is peculiarly incumbent upon us here today so to act throughout our lives so as to leave our children a heritage for which we will receive their blessing and not their curse. It's not what we have that will make us a great nation. It is the way we use it. When I got home, my little baby Lee was almost 3 years old. She loved my sister Bammy so much. She called her Auntie Bai. Well, I told my sister that she could raise the child if she wanted to. She was overjoyed. They both were. And it was better so. I had to get to work and work hard to repair the damage that was done to our principal. I turned to something I'd done all my life instinctively and for fun and made it my profession, writing. I wrote every day for hours and hours and hours. I finished the Naval War of 1812. I wrote Ranch Life, The Winning of the West, a biography of Thomas Hart Benton, and with my closest friend from college, Henry Cabot Lodge, we wrote Hero Tales from American History. Lodge helped me now. He met with the best publishers of New York City, all his closest friends, of course, and he talked about my work. Here, publish this one for Theodore. This is a good one, this Hero Tales from American History. Yes, yes, my name is on it too. We'll publish this one then, the one on the Navy. That's good too, for Theodore. You know he needs the money. And I did. One morning, as I came down the stairs to the front hall, I came face to face with Edith Caro, who was entering on a visit to my sister Corinne, and we exchanged awkward greetings, and then I saw something in her face which surprised me very much. She had blossomed so much as a woman, it was astonishing. And I believe she saw in me, no less, a quite changed Teedy, no longer a childhood friend, but a man. Gentlemen, perhaps you will understand. It had been almost 3 years since my wife died. I had been completely faithful to her memory. Completely. Ladies, perhaps you will forgive what I found hard to forgive in myself, my inconstancy. My inconstancy. But when I saw Edith, and in her eyes I saw that she had waited for me. We have been married for 32 years. We built Sagamore Hill together. We have 5 blessed bunnies together. I cannot conceive of life without her. Just bully. One of my books made a fair amount of money, went into 2 or 3 different printings, and though I was now much more of a literary fella than a politician, Cabot Lodge got me back into politics. So you can blame him. It went like a rocket. I'm Theodore Roosevelt. I'm the new Civil Service Commissioner for the United States, appointed by President Harrison. No, that's Theodore, not Theodore Roosevelt. Yes. No, keep your seats. I'd rather stand. Now, we're going to reform this department, and rather substantially. No longer the cynical battle cry, to the victor belong the spoils. No, to appoint, promote, then reduce and expel from public service working men and women simply because of the politics of each new office holder is as foolish and degrading as it is wicked. And we are going to fix it, you and I. Yes? Good. All right, we're going to have competitive examinations. We're going to have promotions on merit. All of you who would like to help me create government job security, say yes. Yes, now say bully. Bully. Yes, I'm Theodore Roosevelt. I'm the new commissioner for police for New York City. No, that's Roosevelt, not Rosenfeld. Roosevelt. Thank you. Where's the boardroom? Well, I want to meet with everyone right away. No, we're going to have a meeting right now. What time do you say it's late? No, it's only 8:26 p.m. Well, we're going to work much longer hours from now on. All right, where's an officer? I need an officer. Yes, you. Now, I'm going to ask you a question, officer. If you don't answer me truthfully, I'm going to bite your head off. How do you collect your graft? Honorably. Well, of course. Bully. You are Irish, I take it. Yes, of course. Well, bully. Well, nevertheless, we're going to turn off the tap now for the take. For the gamblers and the saloon keepers and the brothel keepers and the confidence men. You're going to help me, yes? All of you who would like to help me and Jacob Reese create a better New York for all the people who have the hardest time living and working here, say yes? Yes. And now you know what else to say? Bully. Yes! Bully! Oh, now don your disguise and prowl the night streets of New York with Harun al-Roosevelt, Caliph of police. How I would like to visit the drawing rooms of the New York aristocracy in disguise. What nonsense I might hear. Henry Adams ranting about the coming enslavement of everyone to the Jews. No doubt. Well, let's open the police department to the Jews. I called my Jewish cops my Maccabees. When Rector Alvart was invited to come by the German-American Bund up there in Yorkville, to come from Berlin and preach a crusade against the Jews, New York rabbis asked me to please prevent him from speaking. Well, of course, I couldn't do that because of the First Amendment. Instead, I assigned my 40 Jewish cops to guard him. Everywhere he went, everywhere he spoke, even when he went to the bathroom. Oh, he looked ridiculous. An anti-Semite and his 40 Jews. Well, Cabot. Cabot? Oh, yes, well, of course. Senator Lodge. Senator Lodge! Of course I'm interested in the Navy. No, the United States is always unready for war. Americans would much rather learn from catastrophe than from experience. Yes, no, George Washington's forgotten maxim is to prepare for war is the most effectual means to promote the peace. Lodge said, Theo! President McKinley simply asked whether or not you had any preconceived plans for the Navy which you would wish to drive through the moment you got in as Assistant Secretary. And I told him not to have the slightest uneasiness on that score. You don't! Do you? I was appointed Assistant Secretary of the Navy, and on the weekends, when the Secretary was away, I got to run the Navy. Oh, bully, what fun. Oh, Cabot, here, quick, put these earmuffs on. Yes, stand on your tiptoes, let your mouth hang open, and let your body hang. Boom, boom. Lord, if only people could see these great guns of the Iowa in action, with all of these other great ships of the line in all their majesty and beauty. Cabot, we must keep this going. We must build up our Navy to its proper standing. Boom! Direct hit! Direct hit, bully! Oh, Cabot! Cabot, oh dear! Well, I told you to put the muffs on your ears. No, yes. President McKinley took me for a drive in his carriage today. He sat there looking like a statue in search of a pedestal. Well, I gave my rather radical views of the situation in the world. Sir, I believe we should dig a Nicaraguan canal right away, so as to be able to put our naval power in both oceans more expeditiously. I believe we should annex the Hawaiian Islands to keep them out of the hands of Japan. And I believe we should throw Spain out of the Caribbean, out of Puerto Rico, out of Cuba. Conditions under Spanish rule in Cuba are unspeakable. Degradation, misery, murderous oppression. Yes, I know that the professional pacifists and the charity hawkers care so little for the horrible facts that they will prefer a peace of continuous murder and terror to a war which could end it and bring real peace. They're determined to make the United States impotent for international good under the pretense of making us impotent for international evil. The statue now spoke. What would you do if war came? Join the army, said I, if you let me. I'm prepared to pay with my body. The statue laughed. Gave assent, and then lapsed back into marble. But he said yes. Quentin Roosevelt appeared today, our 5th. Born very unexpectedly. By the aid of my bicycle, I just barely got to the doctor's in time. Edith doing well. Rioting in Cuba. McKinley dispatched the battleship Maine to Havana. Edith tells me that baby Alice Lee, now 14, is running the streets of Washington with every boy in town. I dispatched her off to New York to Antigua on one day's notice. The battleship Maine blew up in Havana Harbor, victim of a submarine mine. Whether it's accidental or intentional, it is war with Spain. The Rough Riders. The Rough Riders. A more typical American regiment never marched or fought. Composed of all the men and all the races which have made America their home. These men had the right stuff. My father had never gone to fight in the Civil War for many very good reasons. I was now the father of 6 children, with a wife who was recuperating not only from childbirth, but from a difficult surgery. I was 40 years old. I was certainly not in the best of condition. But following my instinct and not my reason, I went to do my duty. I had to. I took 12 extra pairs of these, 2 in my hat. Tropical heat, rain, malaria, yellow fever, omnivorous land crabs the size of jackrabbits, rats the size of cats, mosquitoes, and gorgeous avian life. What music. We came ashore at Daiquiri near Siboney. The only food we had was what we could carry in our pockets. Our job? Take the Spanish fortifications guarding the city of Santiago. Get behind the Spaniards and rout them. What's that? 13,000 of them. There were 600 in our troop. Afoot, we headed up trails into deep jungle. Our objective was a stand of trees called guasimas, and above them a hill on a string of hills called the San Juan Heights, which stood before Santiago. And we immediately began to lose men. Bucky O'Neill? My best and my bravest officer was the first to die. And he was at point, so I knew that we were the first unit fighting the Spanish. What to do then? I had not an idea. I knew if I spread my men out into the jungle, I might get out of touch with them and not even go in the right direction. I suddenly had the frightful feeling that if I lost my troops in the jungle, I could be court-martialed. I heard firing off to my left, and on the old fox hunting theory that you never stop trying to get in at the kill, I ran to my left. I was still wearing my sword, which got in between my legs with a perfect tyro. I left it. I ran up a trail through deep jungle, passing very many dead and horribly wounded men. And suddenly I came face to face with Colonel Leonard Wood, the commander of the Rough Riders Volunteer Regiment. He told me that Brody, the brigade commander, had been shot, that he had moved up, and that I was now commander of the Rough Riders Volunteer Regiment. I thanked him, didn't tell him how confused I was, didn't tell him how relieved I felt that I hadn't committed some awful military sin by running toward the center of the fight, and we spent the rest of the night burying the dead and trying to help the wounded with almost no medical supplies and trying to find food amidst a continuous artillery barrage from both sides, which killed and wounded many, many more men. It was a very long night. And the next morning, we moved out to take a red-tiled house at the top of the hill, which turned out to be the Spaniards' firing bunker from which they could shoot straight down at us as we climbed the hill toward open ground. I rode back and forth in front of my men who were lying in the deep grass. I wanted them to be able to see me. They were dismounted cavalry. I was the only man on horseback. And the Spaniards rained fire down upon us from their modern Mauser rifles. I remember the bullets as they went past sounded like pieces of silk being ripped. My men were armed only with short-range carbines. And we were being killed left and right. It seemed silly to stay where we were, so I moved the Rough Riders up through to the very front of the line, through a regular army unit that was pinned down by the Spanish fire. Why won't you charge? We have no orders. Well, I'll give the order. Well, who are you? My name is Theodore. Never mind, sir. Please, just let my men pass through. Thank you. Charge. Richard Harding Davis, the Hearst correspondent, was with us, and he then described the taking of San Juan Hill for his newspaper. They had no glittering bayonets. They were not massed in regular array. The few men in advance crept up a steep, sunny slope, the top of which roared and flashed with flame. The men kept their rifles pressed against their breasts and moved forward with difficulty as though wading waist-high in water. It was much more wonderful than any swinging charge could have been. They walked to greet death, many sinking suddenly, pitching forward to disappear into the high grass. But the others waded on stubbornly, forming a thin blue line that kept creeping higher and higher up the hill, inevitable as the rising tide. Well, I was at the forefront of that charge. And we swarmed over the top, and we took San Juan Hill. And that night we ate the Spaniards' captured food. I remember salted frying fish. Not too bad, by the way. Thus ended the greatest day of my life. Here's to every friend who struggled to the end. We lost almost 25% of the Rough Riders killed or wounded in the fight. Death often smites the best. But the life of even the best man, the most useful citizen, is not to be hoarded if there is a need to spend it. I believe this about others, but of course I believe it about myself. Every test I'd undertaken before was nothing compared to this. My one chance to do something for my country, to cut my little notch on the measuring rod that exists in every family. I know now I would have turned from my wife's deathbed to answer the call. Home at last. The little birds in the nest on the garden fence are almost grown up, but their mother still feeds them. San Juan Hill made the Rough Riders and me well known across the nation. And 6 months after mustering out with the Rough Riders, I was sworn in as governor of New York. And dealing with the deeply corrupt politics of New York, I began to mutate. Jumping eons of evolution in both directions, mixing both science and my metaphors, I became a wise serpent. The issue was reform, and to that end, I made alliances with both Republicans and Democrats against the old-line bosses, always and everywhere. And of course, I was cordially hated by conservatives of many stripes and radicals of some stripes. and all anti-reformers, mugwumps, flubdubs, and mollycoddles. And after 2 years, they decided to kick me out of their hair in New York and into the vice presidency in the coming election. I didn't want it! No fun at all there! Complete bore of a job! But I decided to go to the nominating convention because it was in politics and I was meant to do my share of the world's work. If I couldn't take the heat, I would prove myself to be a weakling. So I was nominated with every vote but my own. And so I ascended to the seat of the perfect anomaly of innocuousness, the vice presidency, next to President McKinley. I was the fifth wheel of the coach. I was on the stepping stone to oblivion. And 6 months after the election, President McKinley was shot dead by an anarchist. And I became the President of the United States. The youngest in history. I was 42 years old. I was 4 years younger than my father when he died. My father had planted a yellow saffronia rose bush in the garden behind our house on 20th Street, New York City. And he took care of that bush, and he pruned it, and every morning he would cut a rose for his buttonhole. Sometimes as a child, I would run down the stairs ahead of him and cut a blossom to put beside his plate at breakfast as a surprise. Yeah. I took office on my father's birthday. He would have been 70. The White House custom of the day was to present each man with a boutonniere at supper, at the end of supper, with coffee. That night, a yellow saffronia rose was set down beside my plate. And then I felt his hand on my shoulder. Yes, Father. Thank you for the blessing you've given on the life we are to lead here. Well, I tried to conduct my presidency in a manner which I believed would keep my father's blessing. In the New York legislature, I had been known as a man who always kept a pulpit concealed somewhere on his person. But considering what had happened to McKinley, I now kept a pistol concealed somewhere upon my person. I thought I'd be quicker on the draw than any silly anarchist. And of course, the presidency is the most bully, the best pulpit of all. The best task the president has is to educate the public. I acted on the theory that the president was the steward of the people, what I call the Jackson-Lincoln theory. In times of great national crisis, the president has the legal right to do by executive action whatever the people demand, unless the Constitution and the laws explicitly forbid it. But I did not do what the people demanded. If it was wrong, it was not my duty to become a rubber stamp or to look to political opinion polling to form a judgment. Instead, I informed myself, as well as possible, on every single public issue. And then I made a decision based on merit rather than popularity. You see, I believe that the federal government, the United States government, is different in size only, but not in kind, from an ordinary American small-town meeting. I believe that we must have old age pensions, sickness and unemployment insurance, shorter work hours. And I'm absolutely certain that we must have regulation of large corporations. I believe that we must protect the glorious natural beauty of this land. Near the end of my second term, after we had set aside 5 of the great national parks all of the senators and lawmakers of the great northwestern states got tired of my meddlesome Teddy. So they pushed through a measure through the Congress, making it impossible for me, by name, Theodore Roosevelt, to create any further problems for them. Well, I asked Gifford Pinchot, my Secretary of the Interior, how long I had until I had to sign the bill, and he said 9 days. I said, get out the maps. We set aside 51 new preserves, sanctuaries, and parks within that time, and then I was prepared to leave office, had done my duty. And I believe your consciences are raised to the point where you understand that our natural resources are our property. It's ours. We own it. Let's take care of it. I believe that we must have equal rights between men and women, wives and husbands. Of course, a woman should have any career of which she's capable. And I believe that women must be allowed to vote. And now, many of the women that I know are more prepared and better informed than the men I know. They know how to vote. But I insist that we must have equal rights and not identity of function. Just as a man must be a good homemaker, a good husband and father, so also must a woman be a good homekeeper. She is the one indispensable element of our entire society, wife and mother. Without her, the entire nation comes down with a crash. I do not accept a situation, nor should you, where any white man, no matter how ignorant or degraded, is allowed to vote when the Negro vote is suppressed simply because it is the Negro vote. I believe that we must have equal rights and equal opportunities for Negroes and other minority groups. Human rights are more important than property rights. Who said that? Lincoln, of course. But capital must also be protected, as Lincoln also said. I am for a square deal. A square deal for everyone. The world has now set its face hopefully toward America. And our democracy has become the central feature of the world. We will throw out all the old rules of the past, and we will work together with practicality and with compromise to make certain that public corruption and dishonesty become impossible. The Republican Party must return to being sane, constructive, and radical. And if it does not, well, then I have no place in it. I don't think any president ever enjoyed himself as much as I did in office. Godfrey, didn't we have fun? Of course they called me a reformer, but since that was the epithet they used for my father, I considered it a blessing and not a curse. Well, of course, in the summer, Washington melted in the heat. So the Roosevelts, including the president, all went home to Sagamore Hill, to the comparative cool of Oyster Bay, Long Island. Hurrah! Hurrah! Amazingly, I got to spend even more time with my children as president than I did before. Because you see, I wasn't so worried about money because I was paid a decent salary. And I got to live in a nice, clean White House, like many another ordinary, well-off American. And of course, during this entire time, my family had been growing up quite nicely. First, of course, there was Alice Lee. And then Theodore, Ted, named for my father, naturally. Then Kermit, and Ethel, and Archibald, and finally the baby, Quentin. It seems as if Grebbly and Tickly father, that's me, always had a house full of squirming, active, growing bunnies. Ted, let go. Let go! Shh, 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 shh. Alice, Kermit wants you to hold him. No, he does, I can tell. Yes, that's right, you can pick him up, don't be afraid. That's it. Oh, that's beautiful. Oh, you look just like a little mother. Oh, Ted, Ted, let go, or I'll hit you with a pillar. Shh. Now, we don't want to let Mother know, do we? No, we don't want to let Mother know. Oh, here comes Ethel. Here comes Elephant Johnny. Oh, no, my darling, come here. No, come here to Daddy. That's it, up on my knee. There we are. Oh, Ted, will you let go? I'm going to tickle you. Yeah, you want me to. Well, that's a fair warning. Oh, here comes Archibald. Here comes Archie. Oh, Archie. Archie was named for Grandma Roosevelt's great-great-great-great-great-grandpa, who was a great-great-great-great man in the Revolutionary War. What's that? What's the war? Well, that's the war that made our country free. From whom? From Ted? From Ted? No. Yes. Oh, yes, from Ted. That's who. Now I'm coming to get you, Archie. Ethel, coming to get you like King Olaf. Kermit, don't pour that out. I said don't pour that out. Why did you pour that out? Kermit. All right. Who wants a story? Everyone. What? You want me to tell you about the bear? Again? Well, now, you know, an edict has gone forth from Mother saying that we ought to play bear only before supper and not after, as it is too exciting. So, if you will promise me to be very, very quiet and not wake the baby, which would make Mother very cross. Yes, we don't want to make Mother cross, do we? No, we don't want to make Mother cross at all. Well, all right, so, well, let's see. Father was young. What, Ethel? Oh, how young? Oh, very young. As young as Quentin? No, Quentin was a very tiny boy, and he's taking his nap now, so we must be very quiet and not ask so many questions, all right? Yes, well, no, I was bigger than Ted. What, Ethel? Yes, that means I was bigger than you, and bigger than Archie, and bigger than Kermit. Yes, and I was walking through the woods one night in the beautiful state of Colorado in the Rocky Mountains, and it was growing dark. It was sunset, almost dark, red sky. And in a wood of lodgepole pines, a dark wood, I saw a grizzly bear. Well, I got my gun to my shoulder, and I expect my face was pretty pale, Kermit. What, Ethel? Yes, almost as white as your nightgown. And I looked over the barrel, and the barrel was steady, so I shot him with my Winchester. And I wounded him. What, Ethel? No, I didn't kill him yet. I just wounded him, and I made him very, very angry. What, Ethel? Yes, at me. Now, I knew I couldn't leave him because he was wounded. Yes, and because he was angry, and because it was growing dark, and I knew that he would follow me, Archie, like this. And Ted, his footprints were like yours, big and bare and pigeon-toed. What, Ethel? Yes, and dirty, like yours, Ted. What, Ted? All right. So I followed him into the thicket, but now I couldn't see him. I couldn't see him. Was he gone, Archie? You hope so? Ethel? Ted? Not gone. Kermit? He was hiding. Yes, Kermit. He was hiding. And now I heard crackling like twigs breaking and rustling like leaves moving. And suddenly there he was! Right there in front of me and coming at me like a great gray-black tornado cloud, smashing pine branches and throwing them aside like boxes of toothpicks. Well, I got my gun to my shoulder, and I looked over the sight, and he was coming so fast, and his head was shaking from side to side, I couldn't get my sight onto his brain pan. What, Ethel? Yes, his head. So I shot, bang, and bang, both barrels, and then I jumped to one side. Yes, Kermit, yes, to get out of the smoke. But there he was, right in front of me, up on his hind legs, all 9 feet of him, as tall as each of you children stacked one on top of each other's shoulders. And with his giant paw, he tried to swipe me with his claws that were as long and sharp and dirty as your fingernails, Ted. And just as he did, he fell, and he was dead. Ethel, don't cry. Archie, don't cry. No, Papa's not dead. No, the bear was dead. Papa's alive. You see? Ted, don't laugh. Now, what did I have to do next? Yes, Kermit, I had to skin him. I had to take the skin off the 9-foot bear and tie it onto the back of a tiny little pony that didn't like it one bit. It kept slithering out like greasy, bloody, jiggly guts. Don't upchuck, Kermit. No, Ethel, don't be sick. Don't be sick, no. Shh. Well, now you've done it. You've waked the baby. Mother's going to be very angry at all of you. Uh-oh, I think she's coming. Wait a minute, where are you all going? What? Oh, I think it's time for hide and seek. All right. Everybody out? Outside? Outside! That's it! All the Roosevelt cousins, outside for the big obstacle march. That means you go through the obstacle, not over it, not aside it, you go through it. All the Roosevelt cousins, all 16 of you, all in a row. Oh. Alice, stop skipping. This is not a dance, this is a forced march. Franklin, Eleanor, stop talking and giggling back there. There's plenty of time for that later. All right, Alice, out to the end of the dock, jump into the water. What's that? Never mind your clothes. This is a forced march into the water. Good. Who's next? Eleanor, you're next. Out to the end of the dock. Jump in the water, Eleanor. No, Eleanor, jump. Jump! That's good. Now swim. That's good, Alice. Swim, Eleanor. Eleanor, swim! You can't swim! Oh, here I come. Oh, Franklin. Oh, thank you so much. Yes, that's right. That will keep our head up out of the water. Yes. Franklin is a strong young man with a strong mind. Not at all like his flub-dub father, who's rich, that's all, merely rich, and who opposed me on the coal strike settlement. No, Franklin is very tall and strong. He's so tall that he can now outwalk me, in spite of the fact that he smokes, and with a cigarette holder, no less. And he's a Democrat. He just likes to shock everyone, that's all. You know, I think Franklin is going to marry Eleanor one day. What's that? What? Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Of course, yes. Edith calls Eleanor a poor soul. She thinks she's plain. She says her mouth and teeth have no future. I think that Franklin will be lucky to get her. I think that one day the ugly duckling will turn out to be a swan. Well, many times, when Edith would leave the White House and go back to Sagamore Hill, or to visit one of the older children at their schools, she would leave me in charge of the others. And I tried to write to those who were absent every single day. Dear Comet, the old White House was very, very melancholy the other day after you left for school. Yes, it was. Of course, Quentin took advantage of Mother's absence to fall sick due to a riot in candy and ice cream with chocolate sauce. But Ethel was as good as gold to him, and she relieved me of my duties as vice mother. I'm learning judo here in the White House. Yes, from 2 Japanese wrestlers who come here to my office 3 times a week and wrestle with me. Now, I'm hardly of the age or build to be whirled lightly over an opponent's head and battered down on a mattress without damage, but it's splendid. Yes, it's splendid, yes. All right, let's fight. Come on. Let's fight. What's that? Huh? Oh, yes, of course. Arigato. Sa. Kakatekoi. Huh? All right, yes. The toughest fight of my term of office was the Panama Canal. I had to convince all of the professional pacifists and the charity hawkers. Honki-de. Kakatekoi. They said that I was unconstitutional in building the canal. Then I say that Jefferson was unconstitutional in acquiring Louisiana. Muikai. Domo. Sir, they said that I usurped authority. Well, then I say that Lincoln usurped authority in freeing the slaves. So let that go, Sa. What I want to know is, what does it mean to be an American? Does it mean anything? Americans should not be fools and cowards, sentimentalists, who are mentally twisted and morally weak. By Jove, this is good exercise. I like this exercise, but that's enough. Yes, for today, perhaps for the week. I'll let you know. Yes. Arigato. Thank you so much. Oh, yes, good. Segoi de show? Segoi ne. Hi. Domo. Sayonara. Oh. Trying to get Colombia to behave in an ethical manner was like trying to nail currant jelly to a wall. We helped Panama overthrow Colombian misrule. We created peace in the region. We built an international waterway for the good of the entire world. And we exercised the Monroe Doctrine in a responsible, ethical, legal, and peaceful manner. And if I had not undertaken this executive action, I would have been guilty of betraying our country's self-interest. And the canal would not have been built. And to any American who disagrees, I say that you are disloyal, odious, contemptible, hypocrites. And you're guilty of il gran rifiuto. And you can go straight to Dante's Inferno. Come on! Let's make the dirt fly! Boom! 95 tons of American mechanical glory. Boom! American steam shovels, dirt trains, American engineers, carpenters, blasters, boilermakers. Boom! La Boca, the Culebra Cut, Gatun Lake Dam. Boom! Scooping rock and dirt and gravel, pulling down mountains, digging straight through a tropic forest filled with palm, bamboo, bananas, breadfruit, saibas, all filled with gorgeous butterflies and brilliant birds amongst the orchids, and swamps full of alligators and jaguar, tapir, deer. It's great to realize that here in this land where the Spanish first landed, where Balboa crossed the isthmus to view the Pacific, for the first time at Darien, where Indians traded for centuries in river canoes for gold and silver and precious gems, which drew the buccaneers Morgan and Drake and all of the wild destruction they all wrought. Here, Americans are building, one of the wonders of the world. Here, in a few years' time, great ships will float in water 100 feet above where now I sit. It's great to be an American. It's great to be president of such a people. You've got to fight for what you want. The mind without the help of the body cannot go as far as it should. Yes, Father, but the body without the help of the mind cannot go as far as it should. But it can, and it will. And we will. Because we must. We must. My darling children, I miss you all so much. The old White House seems big and lonely and full of echoes with nobody but me in it. My darling Quinnikins. Oh, little Quinty-Quee. How I wish I could see you and Archie come sliding down the banisters again using mess trays as sledge. Oh, Ted, Kermit, how I want to see you throwing the football on the lawn again. Ethel, how I want to see you bring your pony up the elevator in the White House one more time. Confounding quite a few senators. I want to hear my little scamps running up and down the hallways again as hard as they can, knocking on the cabinet room door, interrupting cabinet meetings. Oh, when I walk to the window, suddenly, I want to see you all running over the lawn as hard as you can to play in the sandbox that we built for you. I love you all so much. Archie, Ted, Ethel, Kermit, Quentin turned up here tonight at Sagamore Hill all grown up. He's half an inch taller than I am. And he's in much better shape. He's not nearly as fat as he used to be. And I'm much fatter. Too many bowls of peaches and cream. Seems like he's turning out right in every single way. When he sat down at the piano to play, I was quite amused. But he played pretty well. Now that Christmas has come, we miss you all dreadfully. Well, I left the presidency to my friend Taft with my blessing, but he turned out to be a flub-dub. I fled to Africa and Brazil. I nearly died of cholera morbus. Jungle fever, which gave me this leg. And then I came home to wait. That's all there was to do. All that was left to do was wait. I ran for the presidency again and failed. Got shot by an anarchist in the process. Wasn't as quick on the draw as I thought I'd be. I took a bullet in my chest. And this saved me. Old Four Eyes saved me. And words. This saved me. My speech. I gave my speech that night, and then I went to the hospital. So let me finish what I have come here tonight to tell you. I left the presidency after 7.5 years. In all that time, not one single shot had been fired at a foreign foe. We were at absolute peace. We had nothing and no one to fear. We had built up a mighty naval battle fleet with access to the 7 seas. I demonstrated that by sending the fleet on a cruise entirely around the world. And that cruise was one of the causes that ensured the peace. And then our strength was allowed to decline by flubdubs of both parties until now, when the rogue nations of the world judge it to be 0. 0-0. And now we are in a terrible war. And as yet we've only begun rather dimly to realize that glib sophistry and feeble false amiability, which obviously springs from fear, is of small value when we are faced with stern and brutal men with terrible destructive weapons in their hands. And we cannot fool ourselves that this war will soon be over. Or that if we just go on with business as usual and wave flags and applaud patriotic speeches, that somebody else is going to do the fighting for us. We can have no undivided loyalties now. Professional pacifism and internationalism are the tools of our enemies, and they represent deep disloyalty to our beloved country. The outbreak of this war stunned, blinded, and terrified our people by the extent of the disaster. But then some men in the highest places taught that we should have no concern for the causes of this war, that we should look with tepid indifference on the murder of our unarmed men, women, and children, that we ought to be too proud to fight, that our proper aim should be to negotiate a peace without victory. But now we, the people, at last have faced our duty. 9/10 of wisdom is being wise in time. And now it behooves us to do that duty with masterful efficiency. We are in the war. And Woodrow Wilson has in no way shown that he possesses any special fitness for the presidency. After false, murderous, cowardly delays, finally he sent the German ambassador home and asked the Congress for a declaration of war against Germany. But even now he does not ask for loyalty to this nation. Even now he asks only for support for himself and his policies. We've sent our husbands and our brothers and our sons overseas to spill their blood like water under the flag. And now we're told that their blood and the money saved for war at the expense of our wives and our children do not entitle us to any say in our government. We are to be allowed to pay with the blood of our heart's dearest, and that is all that we are to be allowed to do. And those young men who've gone to the other side, those gallant boys on the golden crest of life, very many of whom will give up in all their joyous prime all the beauty of life and the glory of life for the prize of death in battle for a lofty ideal. Shall not we who stay behind, who have not been found worthy of the grand adventure, shall not we make certain that when those of them who live come home. They shall come home to a nation which we have made for them and for the women who sent them into battle and for the children who are to come after them, have made a nation they will be proud to have fought for or to have died for. My 4 boys instantly volunteered. Quentin wanted to fly. They wouldn't take him because his eyes are like mine weak. But he got in. And then he said to his brothers, I suppose we must now practice what Father preaches. What shall I say to you, my darling Quinnikins? Are we old men whose lives are behind us wrong to fight our wars through our dear children? I would gladly give my life. Finally, I swallowed my pride and I went to see President Wilson in his office at the White House. Sir, everything I've thought or said is now dust in a windy street. All Americans will now back you with a single-minded loyalty. I wish to volunteer to lead a division of men to be raised, equipped, trained by voluntary contribution, and sent over there as quickly as possible. It will mean a great deal to the British and the French to know that we're coming, that the Yanks are coming, and I will be the evidence of it. No, sir, I do not need to lead the division. I will go in a subordinate capacity. I will go in any position. Mr. Wilson, do I need to remind you that I'm a retired Commander-in-Chief of the United States Armed Forces? And as such, I am eligible for any position to which you might appoint me. No, sir, I don't believe that the physical examination need apply. As long as I am fit to enlist these men and instill in them the spirit that is required, which I am certainly able to do. I humbly beg permission, sir. Wilson, let me be with my sons. They have all volunteered for the fiercest fighting. Please. I think he wanted to break my heart. He did. Called me a boy. Told his secretary the best way to treat Mr. Roosevelt is to take no notice of him. That administers the best punishment possible. Father? 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 Is the heroic vision of life I've always believed in false, stupid, criminal? No, I don't believe it. I'm not wrong. Last winter in the hospital, when I was so ill that I was dying, I was glad it was me that was dying there and not one of my sons. They could die for their country. And now I wake up every single night wondering how they are and what I would tell their mother if anything happened. Any of them. We must save our sons, all our sons. We must save our children. What will we do if they are lost? Ted, wounded and gassed, the Distinguished Service Medal, the Silver Star. Archie, severely wounded, leading an attack. His arm, his leg, the Croix de Guerre. Kermit, in the Middle East with the British Army, Now finally back in France and into the thick of it. We toasted them all the other day at lunch with some Madeira. And Mother, her face flushed, pretty as a picture, dashed her glass on the floor and said, "This will never be drunk out of again." But the war continues. And Quentin, the night before her baby left to join up, she came into his room after he fell asleep, and she tucked him in. If only I could see them all come home safe and watch Mother's face as she greets them and their blessed wives and their darling little children. Then let Nunc Dimittis be sung over me. My dear friends, my dear, dear friends, today, this morning, before I got on the train to come here to speak to you, the waiting ended. I could avoid it no longer. Phil Thompson came up to the house again from town. Phil, what is the final news? Did not survive. Is that definite? I see. Confirmed by the German government. Buried where he fell. Full military honors. I see. Thank you, Phil. Poor Quinnickens. But Mrs. Roosevelt, how am I going to break it to her? Oh, Edith, if only I'd known sooner how hard it was for you. Hard for the women who wait and weep, and harder still for those who weep but little, who have the heroic spirit, like you. That good, gallant, tender-hearted boy. Mother, now I know that there's another kind of hero, the one who watches their loved ones march off into danger, into battle. I've always been the one marching off to a war, to a hunt, to another exploration, another important work. I was running, proving. What? Now I know that the greater heroism is with the man or woman who reaches into the darkness to bring back the children in whose hands rests the future of all our years. The one who stays. The one who doesn't run away. Father. Father. You. Edith. I'm sorry. And today we got another letter from him. From the front, from beyond his grave in France. His mother said only, "There is left the wind on the heath, brother." blessed Quentin, the other day, when I was out riding, who should I see in the road ahead of me but a real Brer Rabbit and Brer Terrapin. And they were sitting in the middle of the road solemnly, just as if they'd come out of a storybook. And as my horse walked along, Brer Rabbit went lippity, 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 off into the bushes. And Brer Terrapin drew in his head and legs till I passed. Your loving father, Theodore Roosevelt. No country is worth living in unless you're willing to die for it. And no country is worth dying for unless you're willing to live in it unselfishly, to do service, to be a torchbearer, content to run with the torch as far as you can and then hand it to the next runner before you fall. So there are two things I want you to make up your minds to. First, that you're going to have a good time as long as you live. And next, you're going to do something worthwhile. You're going to work hard and do all of the things that you set out to do. Because life and death are both part of the same great adventure. And the worst fear of all is the fear of living. Good night.